Welcome back to the Manor, Entropians. Julian McBain here. And today we're going to be doing a low-level Panleon hunt, which has become kind of part of my idiom. But we're actually not doing this for the sake of the hunt. There's a discussion I want to start having with all of you. And this is actually more geared toward people who are new to the platform or who are looking at the platform and want to see if it's something they want to get into. And this is going to be the start of my Modern Entropian series. And so what we're going to talk about today is exactly what is Entropia Universe, why do I consider it a platform rather than a game, and how you can kind of carve your niche out in Entropia Universe. So, okay, a little bit of history. Entropia Universe was started in 2003. It was started on a proprietary engine, to my knowledge. It was called Project Entropia, and it was the first platform to use a real cash economy. That means you put money in, it translates into in-game currency, you can buy things, you can sell things, you can craft things that you then sell for markup, and then you can actually withdraw that money back into cold, hard cash. Now, this was completely unprecedented in the video games industry at the time, and was very slow to catch on because, of course, a lot of people had some suspicions about having a real cash economy, which makes sense. Online was still in its infancy, relatively speaking, back in 2003. Broadband had just really come out. The only real MMOs out there prior had been Neverwinter Nights and Ultima Online, and maybe Final Fantasy XI, but I think Final Fantasy XI wasn't even out yet. In fact, I can almost guarantee it wasn't out yet. Let me look that up. But oh no, Final Fantasy had been out for a year. So Final Fantasy XI had been out for a year. Second Life wouldn't come out for another 6 months, and World of Warcraft would come out the next year. That's how new the idea of MMOs was. So you've got this platform, and at the time, the graphical system was fairly state-of-the-art. It was fairly well designed, especially considering the technology we had. And MindArc, the developer, stated that if you put real money in and you make a profit, or even if you don't, as long as it meets our minimum of 1,000 PED, which turns into $100, which I'll get into in a minute, then you can absolutely withdraw the money. And so early adopters, the first wave colonists, took the risk. And some of them did the free-to-play thing, where they actually grinded out the hard grind, and ground out the hard grind, and sweat mobs in order to sell to other players. And there was an actual real market for sweat back then. There is one now, but it's much less. You could make a lot more off of a stack of sweat back then than you can now, by an order of magnitude. But those free-to-play players would go in, and then the depositors, like me, would put their money in, and they'd buy things off these players and then go hunting, or go mining, or go crafting, or whatever, in an attempt to make their money by markup on the reagents, the mats they picked up off of the mobs, or from the probe drops. And so the question would have come up at some point when someone finally decided to withdraw their money, is would MindArc make good on their promise to allow you to withdraw? Because that's the real crux, right? The idea of microtransactions is not new, and I think MindArc kind of spawned the idea. And from a practical perspective, I'm willing to bet you can find someone else who did it first, but from a practical perspective, that's basically what happened. And everyone held with bated breath whether MindArc would, in fact, honor the agreement. And then, with some delay, because the withdrawal rate, you request to withdraw, and it takes like 6 months. 3 to 6 months from what I'm given to understand. They have worked on making it faster, but you're dealing with international banking law, and I'm sure that they have the money invested in securities to help ensure that the money continues to grow, which is how MindArc pays its employees. That's my guess. That's an educated guess coming from the finance world. Because that's what I would do. If I had a game like this and I had my players depositing money in, I'd put it into bonds, right? Because bonds have a constant interest rate. They have a fixed sale rate. And just have them on rotation. Know that every 6 months, some of those bonds are going to mature. You pay out your players who withdrew, and you put the rest of the money back in. And as it matures, now the other thing they might be doing is they might have it in stacked CDs, which would also explain the reason for the delay, because you got to wait for those CDs to mature, and then when they take out the CD, they take out that player's portion, that withdrawal, and they wire it to the player, which is why there are fees. And I believe MindArc is now registered as a banking entity. I don't know that for sure. That's an educated guess, but I don't know how Swedish law works. And MindArc is a Swedish company. Either way, MindArc did in fact honor the agreement to pay out the player. And so with that, the platform began to grow. And let's get into why I call it a platform and not a game. Because at its core, it is in fact a game. But it's moved beyond the point of being a game. And I think that the developer of Second Life came up with this idea. So I kind of stole it from him. But it really applies to Entropia Universe as much as it does to Second Life. Entropia is exactly what you make of it. If you want to treat it like a game, you make your subscription fees, quote unquote, which is your depot. You buy $15 worth of ammo, and you hunt at that level, or you mine at that level, then it's going to be a standard game. On the other hand, there are all kinds of other things you can do. There are people who use it as a social platform. I know of people who log in, they might stand in the sweat circles at like Club Royal on Calypso or on Monria, or they might stand in Camp Icarus or at DSEC or at the I don't know where on Arcadia that people do it, but I know people do it on almost every planet that has a decent population. And they'll just stand around and talk. And some of them are doing other things too, but it's a social platform for them. And I know, like, and if you watch some of Serial Overdrive's content, which I strongly recommend you do if you manage to somehow find me before you found him, he'll talk about there were years where he didn't spend a huge amount of time playing, but he'd come in and just chat. And that's not something you really get in other MMOs. Going into WoW, you don't see a bunch of people just standing around Orgrimmar or Stormwind just there to chat with their friends or be part of the community. You don't see that in Final Fantasy either. They don't just sit there and chat. They actually go out and do shit, which is great. But in Entropia Universe, it's a place where you can converge. If one of your friends has an apartment or a house like on Isle of Troy, you can all convene there and have a little party. I went on my son and I attempted to go on one of the group things that Titans of Space host. And for like an hour before you get on the ship, there's a friggin' dance party at Athena Spaceport. What other platform do you see shit like that happening? You don't. You absolutely don't. So the sense of community here moves it beyond being a game. Okay? It really has become more of a platform, an artificial place. No, not artificial, because this is very real in a very real sense. It has become real. Even though it is a product of artifice, it is a virtual place where people can gather and can interact and can do business, because we do business. That's what all your trades are. And dance and have fun. That's why I consider it a platform. And think about it. This came out, I think this came out pre-MySpace. I'm pretty sure this came out pre-MySpace. And of course, everyone knows MySpace was really the platform in the early 2000s, right? You know? Yeah, because MySpace came out in 2005, and then Facebook came out, I think, shortly thereafter. Oh, no. Facebook actually came out the year before, in 2004. I stand corrected. So, a year before social media came out, MindArc developed what was essentially a virtual platform that could act like a social media platform in a lot of ways. Because that's... You don't get the curated content you get on social media, nor do you get a lot of the garbage, but you get the interaction with people. And so, in a very real sense, it's a very much a social platform, even though it's not social media. But so they created this platform, and it's developed over time. Over the last 17 years, they've done a complete engine change, and then about a year and a half ago, they did the interface revamp. Actually, I think it was almost exactly a year ago. I'll have to look that up. They did the whole interface revamp, and then they did a facelift on it, so all of the graphics were tighter and more modernized. And they've always tried to keep things so that as many platforms as possible, as many systems as possible can play it. But you got to make sure it's keeping up with the times enough to where the newer computers aren't going to just completely destroy it. So they've had to update. But they've been very careful to try to keep it as accessible as possible, which I think is to MindArc's benefit. I think it's the very... Hell, I have somehow managed to run this thing on a Chromebook. No shit. I did it. I wish I was able to record it. It was funny as hell because the Chromebook just couldn't really handle it very well. But it worked like a champ. It kept the engine running. It just couldn't handle the graphics. Accidentally shot that guy's sweat target. So we've got this platform. And on this platform, you can do a number of things. You can hunt, you can mine, you can sweat mobs like this guy Tempest is doing. I think that's a guy. Whoops. Nope, that is most definitely a... Hang on. I think that's a check. Sorry, Tempest. Didn't catch that you were... Okay, so... Grab this one. And that's all a matter of etiquette. Like, I missed the fact that Tempest was sweating that one. As a matter of etiquette, you don't shoot someone else's target. For a couple of reasons. One, if they've tagged it, you're not going to get the wood. It's a waste of money. But in the event of a sweat target, like Tempest, you can't... after they had finished sweating the mob, they usually shoot the mob to get the loot off of it. It's called swunting. I'll go into swunting in another video. We're going to be getting into all of the various aspects of how to be the modern Entropian and building up what your niche is, but for the time being. And so part of that etiquette is not shooting someone else's target, especially when they're sweating, because that's hard-ass work, okay? I've done it. I've spent time in the fields at Club Royal. I've spent time doing the swunting thing at Half Moon Cove. And there are some... You ever want to see someone, like, get ragged on for being an asshole? It's shooting someone's sweat target on purpose. And there are people who do it. And that's a huge violation of platform etiquette. people still do it, and there's very little consequence that can be had for it until they, you know, traipse into a PvP zone and someone recognizes them. But it is what it is. But anyway, getting back on track. The platform itself, being a real cash economy, allows for something that has never been done prior. Now, keep in mind, this is now 17 years old, so now it's well developed. There are competitor games that are being developed, or platforms that are being developed. There is one specifically that I also play when the alphas are running, the early accesses are running. Entropia Universe was, or Project Entropia, and then by extension Entropia Universe, was well ahead of its time. That doesn't mean that it isn't relevant. They did a real good job. MindArc has begun... I think part of the problem is that they didn't really do a good job marketing it. Because I only heard of Entropia Universe like 7 years ago. 8 years ago. Something like that. Which, to be fair, is still a pretty long time. But when a game's almost 20 years old, that's, you know, that's half the lifespan. And so I think that was the failing that MindArc has. They didn't advertise. Which is why the real cash economy platform has been slow to be adopted. But now on a platform of like 1.2 million players, with millions and millions of dollars in player money in the game, to MindArc, it's a liability because they have to pay this money out if the players all decide to make a run at it. But they've got millions of dollars of player debt because they hold the money, and the players have the right to the money if something were to happen to MindArc, or if they were all decide to chip out and just TT everything, which we'll get into too. And that's a concept for the new player that you need to think of as this is an economic non-simulation, which means that the economy in this game is real, 100%. Everything you own has some sort of intrinsic value. That intrinsic value is called the TT value. And for this stack, it's 1.83 PED. That translates to 18.3 US cents. Because the Project Entropia dollar, PED, is pegged to the US dollar on a 10-to-1 ratio. That does not float. It is pegged. So everything in this platform has intrinsic value. That's 58 cents worth of shrapnel. That's 2 cents worth of components. That's a penny's worth of tail tips. That's not even a penny's worth of medium grade power supplies, although why these are so cheap, oh, it's probably because it's dead. How I managed to get this off of Panleon, though, I'll never know. And chips too. So everything on the platform has intrinsic value. That means that everything on the platform represents something of real money. The way players can make money is through markup. So, for instance, for today, the highest markup is 101.95%. For the week, it's been 102.07%. That means that this 1.83, you don't auction it or sell it to people for 1.83. You sell it for a little more. And there are such things as minimum reasonable stacks. Like, I wouldn't auction 1.83 PED worth of animal muscle oil. You want like 50 PED, that's $5 US worth of it, because then you actually can put the markup in, right? And I'll get into entroponomics here in another video, but the long story short is, for 50 PED at 102% or 1.02, you can sell it for 51. Not a huge markup on that, and that's very true, but there are some items in this game that go for 150%. This goes for 130. 115 to 130, depending on who's selling and how popular it is. This gun here goes for 104. I don't even know that you can sell this. No, you can't sell that on the auction house. This sword, 106. And it's worth 79. So I could sell that for 84. Doesn't say, it's not a lot. It's like 50 cents more in US dollars. But that's not the point. The point is that you're making something off of it. So you've got this economic non-simulation, and it really is an unregulated economy. And honestly, it's something that economists really should pay more attention to, but they don't. And we're going to get into this in my Entroponomics video, which will be coming out here in the next week or two. But because of that revolutionary notion that you have a real economy in a digital space using real money or in-game currency with a real money value, a guaranteed value by the company that backs it, they've created this space that allows players to experiment with what is quite literally an unregulated space. The only regulations in this space really are, in most places, you can't kill other players. You have to work within the confines of what is possible within the engine, which, okay, fine, it's just like physics in the real world. And you have to operate with the tools that they have provided you, which are vast. That's it. And because there's no law, that means it allows people to act the way they would act if they were in a place with no law. No, there are people who are completely altruistic. You ask them for a ride to another planet, they'll absolutely pick you up and bring you to another planet. They will assist you if you get stuck or lost. There's a whole voluntary rescue group that goes in and helps new players who get stuck in event zones. It's called the Calypso Rescue Team. You've got people like the Titans of Space who work with the devs to provide events to make the game more fun. It's just an amazing thing. But on the other hand, you also have your criminal element. There are con artists on this platform that will con you out of PED. And they'll often beg you for little things. Like, can I have a couple PED to get some ammo? Can I have a gun? That's only like 9 PEC. But you do it enough, you're making money off that shit. Or then you have pirates who hang out in the lootable PvP zones. And they'll hang out up there, and when an unsuspecting spacefarer goes by, they drop in, destroy their quad wing or Sleipnir, whatever they're flying in, and because it's lootable, they take their stuff. That's all possible on this platform, and Mindark will not enforce any form of rule. That's part of the platform. This is literally an anarchist zone. It's what it comes down to. If you and a bunch of friends have the power to take over an area, a PvP zone, and close it, you can do it. I've seen individual Ubers take over the oil field on Calypso. There's an oil field on Calypso, and it's PvP, one of the PvP zones. And they'll just be running around collecting the free oil. And they'll eliminate other players who try to even go into the zone. They'll say this area is closed, and they'll have like an LR-55 and one-shot kills all the way around. And that's it. And players can't get in. I've been flying through with a Sleipnir and had one of them shoot my Sleipnir, my freaking Sleipnir, get blown out of the sky with a one-shot. I can't even imagine how much PED it costs to fire that gun. And to be fair, it was hilarious, because I'm flying over, I'm dropping bombs on them, and one of them snipes me with a freaking sniper rifle. Boom, there goes my Sleipnir. I laughed. That might actually be on video. Funny as hell. But these are all things that are possible. And that's why I consider it a platform. So, okay. In my next video. Holy shit, that's a global. that is a global for 12 ped. I didn't even know you could global off of these. That's a great way to end a video. I like it. In my next video, my intention is to discuss entroponomics. Like, truly dig into entroponomics, the economics of the platform. And talk about the auction house and the trade terminal, deeds and shares, and all of the aspects of how money works within Entropia Universe. So I hope you look forward to that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. Also, please consider going to patreon.com/JulianMcBain if you want to support my work. If you do, you get a copy of The Modern Entropian and Personal Finance for Gamers for being a member. And I appreciate all the support from my patrons, Red Kryptonite, Spectrum 3900, and Jason Lambertson. Thank you so much for your support. All right, all. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your support, and we will see you in the next one.